Hey warriors, welcome back to the channel. They control you through approval. You don't see it. You think you're just being considerate, collaborative, socially aware. But here's what's actually happening. Every time you modify your behavior to earn someone's approval, you're teaching them they can control you. Every time you choose what they want over what you want, you're reinforcing that their opinion matters more than your own judgment. Every time you feel anxiety when someone disapproves, you're proving you're still enslaved to external validation. And here's the part you haven't realized. You've given them veto power over your life. Not legally, not formally, but functionally. Because before you do anything, before you make a decision, pursue an opportunity, express an opinion, live according to your values, you run it through a filter. Will they approve? And if the answer is no, if you sense disapproval, if you anticipate judgment, you don't do it. You adjust, you compromise, you sacrifice what you want to avoid what you fear, their rejection. If you're starting to see how approval seeking has been controlling your entire life and you're ready to learn how to break free, subscribe now. And this seems rational. This seems like social intelligence, emotional maturity, being a good person. But here's what it actually is: complete abandonment of self-sovereignty in exchange for the illusion of social security. You're living your entire life for an audience that will never be satisfied. Someone's always disappointed. Someone always thinks you should have done it differently. Someone always has an opinion about how you're living wrong. And despite all that performance, despite all that self-betrayal, despite all that exhausting effort to make everyone happy, they still don't approve. Because approval is always conditional, always temporary, always just out of reach, which means they control you, not through force, through your addiction to validation, through your fear of disapproval, through your inability to live with the possibility that someone might judge you negatively. You've been trained to be a slave, not to a person, to a system that controls you through the promise of acceptance and the threat of rejection. And the more you chase approval, the more power that system has over you. Machiavelli understood something that destroys people-pleasers. Living for others' approval isn't kindness, it's cowardice dressed up as virtue. The need for approval is the chain that keeps you obedient, manageable, controlled. And the people who figured this out, they're not trying to earn your approval, they're living entirely for themselves while you're exhausting yourself trying to please them. Stay till the end, because I'm about to show you why every moment you spend seeking validation is a moment you're voluntarily imprisoned, why approval seeking is the most sophisticated form of slavery ever invented, and how to build sovereignty so complete that others' opinions become completely irrelevant to how you live. Let me show you exactly how this works, how approval became your prison, how you got trapped in a life spent performing for validation. You didn't choose this consciously, you were trained into it. Starting young, your parents gave you approval when you behaved correctly and withdrew it when you didn't. Your teachers rewarded compliance with praise and punished deviation with disapproval. Your peers accepted you when you conformed and rejected you when you stood out. And through thousands of repetitions, you learned the operating system: modify your behavior to earn approval, avoid disapproval at all costs. And that operating system is still running right now. In every interaction, you're about to express an opinion, but you pause. You calculate. Will they agree? Will they think less of me if I say this? Will I create conflict? And if the answer suggests disapproval, you adjust. You soften the opinion. You hedge. You say what you think they want to hear instead of what you actually think. You've just traded authenticity for approval. You've just reinforced the chain. Or you want something. Could be a career move, a relationship choice, a lifestyle change. And your first thought isn't, do I want this? It's, what will they think? What will my family think? What will my friends think? What will people at work think? And if you sense they'll disapprove, if you anticipate judgment, disappointment, criticism, you don't pursue it. You sacrifice what you want to avoid, their disapproval. You've just given them veto power over your life, and they didn't even have to say anything. You censored yourself on their behalf. This is the trap. This is the prison, and the bars are invisible because they're made of your own need for validation. You're not being physically restrained, you're restraining yourself. You're choosing their approval over your autonomy, and you're doing it constantly, in small decisions and large ones, in what you say and what you hide, in what you pursue and what you abandon. You're living your entire life through a filter of will they approve. And here's what makes it so insidious: it never ends. You can't earn enough approval to be free, because approval is always conditional on your continued conformity. The moment you deviate, the approval is withdrawn, so you're constantly performing, constantly managing their perception, constantly sacrificing pieces of yourself to maintain their validation. And it's exhausting, and it's never enough, because there's always someone who disapproves, always someone who thinks you should be different, always someone whose standards you're not meeting. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel." Translation: people will judge you based on surface perception, regardless of your actual intentions or reality. And if you're living for their approval, you're trying to manage perceptions you can never fully control. You're performing for an audience that's judging you by standards you didn't set and can't satisfy. You're enslaved to opinions that change based on whim, mood, and self-interest that has nothing to do with you. So let's expose the full mechanism. Let's show you exactly how approval seeking destroys your life, because until you see the complete cost, you won't be motivated to pay the price of freedom. And freedom has a price: other people's disapproval. Cost 1. You never know what you actually want, because you've spent your entire life filtering desires through will they approve. You've suppressed so many authentic wants, so many genuine interests, so many real preferences that you've lost touch with your own internal compass. Someone asks what you want, and you don't know, because what you want has been irrelevant for so long. What they want has been the determining factor. So you've atrophied the muscle of knowing yourself. You've become a stranger to your own desires. You're living someone else's life in your body. Cost 2. You're constantly anxious, because approval is always uncertain. You never know if you've done enough, if you've said the right thing, if you've managed their perception correctly. So you're constantly scanning for signs of disapproval, constantly analyzing their reactions, constantly worrying whether you've maintained their validation. And that anxiety is the price of living for external validation. You've made your emotional state dependent on variables you can't control, other people's opinions, moods, judgments, and that dependency creates permanent instability. Cost 3. You resent the people you're trying to please, because at some level, you know you're sacrificing yourself for them. You know you're betraying your own desires to earn their approval. You know you're living for them instead of for yourself. And that creates resentment. Not conscious always, but it's there, buried under the performance, under the people-pleasing, under the nice person facade. You resent them for having power over you, even though you're the one who gave them that power, even though you're the one choosing to live for their approval. The resentment is real, and it poisons relationships, and you can't express it, because expressing it would risk their disapproval. Cost 4. You attract people who exploit your need for approval, because approval seeking makes you predictable, makes you manageable, makes you exploitable. And certain people, manipulators, narcissists, users, they can sense this. They can sense that you need validation, and they use it. They give you approval when you serve them. They withdraw it when you don't. They've figured out the exact mechanism that controls you, and they deploy it strategically, and you comply, because you need the approval, because you can't handle the disapproval. So you end up surrounded by people who are using your need for validation to extract value, compliance, and sacrifice from you. Cost 5. You never build anything meaningful, because meaningful things require deviation, require going against consensus, require doing things that people will criticize, judge, or reject. Innovation gets disapproval. Authentic art gets disapproval. Unconventional careers get disapproval. Different lifestyle choices get disapproval. And if you can't tolerate disapproval, you can't do anything that matters. You're limited to what's safe, what's conventional, what everyone approves of, which means you're limited to mediocrity, to conformity, to living exactly like everyone else while calling it a life. These 5 costs, loss of self-knowledge, chronic anxiety, buried resentment, attracting exploiters, inability to build anything meaningful, they're the price of approval seeking, and you're paying it, right now, today. In every decision filtered through will they approve, in every authentic desire suppressed to avoid judgment, in every compromise made to maintain validation. You're paying the cost of slavery while thinking you're just being socially intelligent. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. You have an opportunity. Could be a job, could be a relationship, could be a move to a new city, and it's what you want. You feel pulled toward it. It aligns with your values, your interests, your vision for your life. But you know they'll disapprove. Your family will think it's risky. Your friends will think it's weird. People at work will judge you for leaving, and that anticipated disapproval stops you. Not the actual disapproval, the anticipated disapproval. They haven't even said anything yet, and you've already given them veto power. So you don't do it. You stay in the job you hate because it's respectable. You stay in the relationship that doesn't serve you because leaving would disappoint people. You stay in the city you've outgrown because moving would seem irresponsible. You sacrifice what you actually want to avoid what you actually fear, their judgment, and you tell yourself it's the mature thing to do, the responsible thing, the considerate thing, but it's not. It's the cowardly thing. You're choosing their approval over your life and calling it virtue. Or you're in a conversation. Someone says something you disagree with, and your authentic response is to challenge it, to express your actual opinion, to engage honestly. But you pause, you calculate. If I disagree, will they be offended? Will they think less of me? Will I create conflict? And that calculation overrides authenticity. So you stay silent, or worse, you agree with something you actually disagree with. You nod along. You validate an opinion you think is wrong. You've just betrayed yourself to maintain their approval. You've traded truth for validation, and you've reinforced the pattern. Their comfort matters more than your honesty. Or someone asks you for something, time, money, help, a favor, and you don't want to give it. You're already overextended. You have your own priorities. Saying yes would cost you in ways you can't afford. But you know saying no will disappoint them, will make them think you're selfish, will risk their disapproval. So you say yes. You sacrifice your own needs to avoid their judgment. You give what you can't afford to give because you can't afford to lose their approval. And they learn, I can extract from this person. They won't say no. They need my validation too much. This is the pattern. This is the daily operation of the approval-seeking prison. Thousands of small betrayals of self. Thousands of moments where their opinion matters more than your authentic response. Thousands of decisions where you choose validation over truth, approval over desire, conformity over sovereignty, and each one tightens the chain. Each one reinforces the programming. Each one trains you deeper into slavery. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote that princes must be willing to be hated to maintain their sovereignty, and the same applies to you. You must be willing to be disapproved of, to be judged, to be called selfish, difficult, uncaring, to have people disappointed in you, to lose relationships that were contingent on your compliance. That willingness, that capacity to live with disapproval, that's the price of freedom, and until you're willing to pay it, you'll remain enslaved. If this is exposing how deeply you've been controlled through approval seeking, hit that like button. It tells me this is landing. and it pushes this message to others who are still sacrificing themselves to please people who will never be satisfied. Now let's build the alternative. Let's show you how to live for yourself instead of for approval. How to build sovereignty so complete that others' opinions become irrelevant to your decision-making. This isn't about being rude. This isn't about not caring about anyone. This is about reclaiming internal authority. This is about making your own judgment the final authority on how you live. This is about severing the chain that's been controlling you through validation and rejection. Principle 1. Accept that disapproval is inevitable. This is the foundation. You cannot live authentically and have universal approval. It's impossible, because authentic living means deviation, means making choices that not everyone will agree with, means prioritizing your values over consensus. And deviation always triggers disapproval from someone, always. So the question isn't, how do I avoid disapproval? It's, am I willing to live with disapproval, to live authentically? And until you answer yes to that question, you're still enslaved. Here's the reframe. Disapproval is data, not directive. When someone disapproves of your choice, that's information about their values, their preferences, their worldview. It's not information about whether you should make a different choice. You can acknowledge their disapproval, you can understand their perspective, but their disapproval doesn't have authority over your decision. You do. And once you internalize this, once you stop treating disapproval as something that must be avoided, you've broken the primary chain. Principle 2. Stop explaining yourself. Approval seekers over-explain. They justify, they defend, they try to make people understand why they made the choice they made. And all of that is seeking approval. It's trying to convert disapproval into approval through explanation. But here's the truth. If someone disapproves, explaining won't change it. They'll just find new reasons to disapprove. So you stop explaining. You make your choice. Someone disapproves, and you simply acknowledge it. I understand you disagree. And then you move on. No justification, no defense, no attempt to convert them. Their approval isn't required for your choice to be valid. Principle 3. Let relationships filter themselves. When you stop living for approval, some people will leave. They'll be uncomfortable with your new sovereignty. They'll miss the version of you that was manageable, predictable, controllable, and they'll drift away. Let them. These are relationships that were contingent on your compliance, on your willingness to sacrifice yourself to maintain their approval. And those relationships were never serving you. They were using you. So their departure is clarification, not loss. The people who stay, the people who can handle your sovereignty, those are the relationships worth having. Principle 4. Prioritize regret of action over regret of inaction. Approval seekers avoid action because action risks disapproval. So they choose inaction, they choose safety, they choose the path that won't trigger judgment, and they live with regret. Regret of the things they didn't do because they were afraid of what people would think. That regret is corrosive. It accumulates. It becomes the defining feature of their life. I didn't pursue what I wanted because I was afraid of disapproval. Flip the script. Choose action. If you're going to have regret, let it be regret of something you tried, not something you were too afraid to attempt. Principle 5. Build internal metrics for success. Approval seekers measure success by external validation. Did people approve? Did I get recognition? Did I maintain acceptance? And those metrics keep you enslaved, because external validation is controlled by others. You can't determine it, you can only influence it. And influence requires conformity, so you switch to internal metrics. Did I live according to my values? Did I pursue what I actually wanted? Did I make the choice that served my vision? These metrics are controllable, they're yours, and success measured by internal metrics can't be taken away by others' disapproval. These 5 principles, accepting inevitable disapproval, stopping explanations, letting relationships filter, prioritizing action, building internal metrics. They're the foundation. They're the framework for transitioning from approval seeking to self-sovereignty. And they work, not by making you immune to others' opinions, but by making those opinions irrelevant to your choices. You can hear the disapproval, you can acknowledge it, but it doesn't control you anymore. It doesn't have veto power. It's just noise. Let me show you what this looks like when you actually implement it. Same scenario as before. You have an opportunity that aligns with what you want, but you know will trigger disapproval. Family will think it's risky. Friends will think it's weird. But this time, you're operating from sovereignty. So you evaluate the opportunity on its merits. Does it serve you? Does it align with your values? Does it move you toward your vision? And if the answer is yes, you pursue it. Not despite their disapproval, indifferent to their disapproval. Their opinion is noted, but it's not determinative. And they express disapproval. They tell you it's a mistake. They express concern. They try to talk you out of it. And you don't defend. You don't explain. You don't try to convert them. You simply acknowledge, I understand you see it differently. I'm moving forward with this. And then you do. And they're uncomfortable, because they've lost the power to control you through disapproval. The mechanism they're used to deploying, withdrawing approval to modify your behavior, it's not working. And that makes them escalate. They get more insistent, more critical, more disappointed, and you remain unmoved, because you've severed the connection between their approval and your choices. Or you're in a conversation. Someone says something you disagree with, and instead of calculating whether disagreement will cost you approval, you just express your actual opinion, clearly, directly, without hedging, and they react negatively. They get defensive, they seem offended, and you don't backtrack, you don't soften, you don't try to smooth it over. You let them be offended, because their comfort with your opinion is not your responsibility. Your authenticity is, and you've chosen authenticity over their approval. Or someone asks you for something you don't want to give, and instead of saying yes to avoid disappointing them, you say no, just no. Not I'd love to, but I can't. Not maybe another time. Just no. I'm not available for that. And they're surprised, because they're used to you saying yes. They're used to you accommodating. They're used to being able to extract from you through the threat of disapproval. And now you've removed that option, and they might get upset. They might call you selfish. They might withdraw. Let them. Because their approval was contingent on your compliance, and compliance is slavery. This is sovereignty in action. This is living for yourself instead of for approval. And it's uncomfortable at first, because you've been conditioned to feel anxiety when people disapprove. That conditioning doesn't vanish immediately, but every time you act despite the anxiety, every time you choose authenticity despite anticipated disapproval, every time you let someone be disappointed without adjusting your choice, you weaken the conditioning. You build new neural pathways. You train yourself that disapproval isn't dangerous. It's just information you can choose to ignore. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." And here's how that applies to sovereignty. If you cannot have both approval and freedom, choose freedom every time. Because approval without freedom is just comfortable slavery. Fear, or in this context, the willingness to be disapproved of. That's what creates sovereignty. That's what makes you uncontrollable. That's what allows you to live for yourself. Now let's address the guilt. Because when you start living for yourself, when you stop seeking approval, you're going to feel guilty. You've been trained to feel guilty for prioritizing yourself, for disappointing people, for not accommodating, for being selfish. And that guilt is the final chain, the last mechanism trying to pull you back into approval seeking. So you need to dismantle it. Here's the reframe. Selfishness isn't a vice, it's a requirement for a life worth living. You've been taught that prioritizing yourself is bad, that putting your needs first is wrong, that self-interest is immoral, but that teaching serves everyone except you. It keeps you manageable. It keeps you giving. It keeps you sacrificing. And who benefits? Everyone you're sacrificing for, not you. You benefit from selfishness, from prioritizing your needs, from living for yourself. That's not immoral. That's survival. And here's the truth they don't want you to know. Everyone is selfish. The people telling you not to be selfish, they're being selfish. They want you to prioritize their needs over yours. That's selfish. They want you to accommodate them. That's selfish. They want you to sacrifice so they can benefit. That's profoundly selfish. The only difference is they've convinced you that their selfishness is reasonable and yours is wrong, and that asymmetry is how they control you. So you flip it. You become strategically selfish. You prioritize your needs, your values, your vision, your life. And when people call you selfish, you don't defend, you don't feel guilty, you just recognize they're upset because I stopped prioritizing them. And that's their problem, not mine. Their disappointment is data about what they wanted from me. It's not data about whether I should change my choice. Let me give you the daily practice, the tactical implementation of living for yourself instead of approval. Because this isn't a one-time decision, this is a daily practice of choosing sovereignty over validation. Practice 1. Make one decision daily based solely on what you want, not what they'll approve of. Doesn't have to be big, could be small. What you eat, what you wear, how you spend your evening. But make the decision based entirely on your preference, with zero consideration of whether anyone will approve. You're training the sovereignty muscle. You're building the pattern of internal authority. Practice 2. Express one authentic opinion daily, without hedging. Something you actually think, stated clearly, without softening, without qualifying, without checking if they'll agree before you say it. You're training yourself that your thoughts have value, independent of whether others validate them. You're building the pattern of authenticity over approval. Practice 3. Say no to one request daily, something someone asks for that you don't want to give. Time, help, accommodation, whatever. Just say no, not I can't. No, I'm not available for that. You're training the boundary muscle. You're building the pattern of prioritizing your needs over their wants. Practice 4. Sit with disapproval without fixing it. Someone expresses disappointment, judgment, criticism, and instead of trying to fix it, explain it, or convert them, you just let it exist. You acknowledge it, and you move on. You're training yourself that disapproval isn't dangerous. It's just a feeling someone else is having that you don't need to manage. Practice 5. Audit your choices for approval seeking. At the end of each day, review your decisions. How many were based on what you wanted versus what you thought they'd approve of? Where did you sacrifice authenticity for validation? Where did you give them veto power? You're building awareness. You're seeing the pattern. And awareness is the first step to change. These 5 practices, daily sovereign decisions, authentic opinions, strategic no-os, sitting with disapproval, choice auditing, they're the implementation. They're how you transition from approval seeking to sovereignty. One day at a time, one decision at a time, one moment of choosing yourself over their validation at a time, and it compounds. Each sovereign choice makes the next one easier. Each moment of withstanding disapproval weakens the conditioning. Each boundary you hold reinforces your authority. And here's what happens over time. You stop feeling anxious about their opinions. You stop calculating whether they'll approve before you act. You stop modifying yourself to earn validation, not because you've become callous, not because you don't care about anyone, but because you've built internal authority so strong that external opinions simply don't have the power they used to have. They can disapprove. It doesn't change your choice. They can judge. It doesn't change your direction. They can withdraw approval. It doesn't change your sovereignty. This is the transformation from living for approval to living for yourself, from being controlled by validation to being sovereign, from asking permission to taking authority, from performing for an audience to living authentically, and it's not comfortable. It's not easy. People will call you selfish. People will be disappointed. People will leave. But those are features, not bugs. That's the price of freedom. And freedom, real freedom, the kind where you actually live according to your own values and desires, that's worth any price. Machiavelli understood that princes who try to be loved by everyone are controlled by everyone. That sovereignty requires the willingness to be hated. That power comes not from approval, but from the capacity to act despite disapproval. And the same applies to you. You're not a prince, but you are sovereign over your own life, or you should be. And that sovereignty is incompatible with living for approval. You choose one or the other. Approval or sovereignty. Validation or freedom. Their opinion or your life. If you're ready to stop living for their approval and start living for yourself, subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me which practice you're starting with. Share this with someone who's still exhausting themselves trying to please people who will never be satisfied. Because the world is divided into two groups, people who live for approval and people who live for themselves. And you just chose which group you're joining. You can't go back now. You can't unsee what you've seen. Approval seeking isn't social intelligence, it's slavery. Every moment you spend seeking validation is a moment you're giving someone else authority over your life. Every decision filtered through "will they approve" is a decision where you've surrendered sovereignty. Every authentic desire suppressed to avoid judgment is a piece of yourself sacrificed on the altar of other people's comfort. And it's optional. The prison is real, but the bars are made of your own conditioning, your own fear of disapproval, your own need for validation. And you can walk out any time, not by eliminating the need that takes time, but by acting despite the need, by choosing authenticity despite the fear of judgment, by prioritizing your life over their approval, by becoming so comfortable with disapproval that it no longer has power over you. Machiavelli wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." The trap is approval seeking. The fox recognizes it and refuses to step in. The lion doesn't care if wolves approve, he lives according to his nature, and you need to be both. The fox who sees the approval trap for what it is, and the lion who lives for himself, regardless of who disapproves. You're done performing, you're done sacrificing, you're done living for an audience that will never be satisfied. Starting now, starting with the next decision, starting with the next moment where you choose what you want over what they'll approve of. That's the moment. That's where sovereignty begins, not in some grand gesture, in the quiet choice to prioritize yourself when every instinct is screaming to seek their validation. Welcome to freedom. It's uncomfortable. It's lonely sometimes. It costs relationships that were built on your compliance. But it's yours, completely yours. And that ownership, that sovereignty, that's the only thing in life that actually matters. Not what they think, what you choose, not their approval, your life. Live for yourself, not for validation, not for approval, not for their comfort, for yourself, entirely, unapologetically, sovereignly. That's Machiavelli's philosophy. That's the path to freedom. That's how you escape the approval prison and build a life that's actually yours. Stop seeking their validation, start living your truth, and let them disapprove. Their disapproval is the sound of your chains breaking,